Hello, everybody. This is Michelle from the home office of Sarah Goehrke, who is our guest speaker today for class. Okay, so this woman is a big deal in the 3D printing industry. So I wanted her to give us a little bit of background about how she got into that industry, and I want her to talk a little bit about the skills that it takes to be choosing your own path. May it be a linear path or a non-linear path into the career that you're picking. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about soft skills. Soft skills are those skills that you get by communicating, time management, being able to advocate for yourself, being able to be diplomatic in difficult situations, being on time for work, being somebody that people trust. These are all in the realm of soft skills, and I would like you guys to understand how important soft skills are when you're in a career field. Whatever career field you choose, it doesn't matter what your major is, this is something that you're going to need to know how to do to develop these skills that you have. So I'm going to start interviewing Sarah and talking a little bit about her career path, which was kind of all over the place at first. And that's okay. That's how it is. A lot of people fall into whatever it is that they're going to fall into by taking advantage of opportunities presented to them. So today you're going to hear about Sarah's story, starting with the first question. Way back when you first started college as a freshman, where did you go to school and what did you major in? Favorite question of everybody. What did you major in?
I started school in 2003 at Muskingum College, which is now Muskingum University. It's a literal liberal arts school in southeastern Ohio. And I went in thinking that I would kind of stay in line with my family because my immediate family are all teachers. So my thought was that I would be an education major and teach high school English and direct the school plays because I love theater. And so I stuck with the education program for 2 years. Muskingum's a great school for teaching teachers to teach. Mm-hmm. And then after some classroom experience and tutoring, I accepted that I shouldn't be a teacher. I should not be a teacher. I don't have the patience, I don't have the temperament, and you're welcome, students of the world who I'm not teaching. I think you're better for it, and I think I am too. So I dropped the education part, but kept up with English and Spanish. So I declared a dual major in English and Spanish, and then added a Spanish minor. I ended up graduating summa cum laude with the 2 degrees and minor, and it would have been 3 degrees, except I decided on that course a little bit late and wanted to graduate on time, so I didn't have time in that 4 years to also add a term abroad to make Spanish a major, but I felt like 2.5 degrees was enough.
Yes.
So that was what I did in college.
All right, thank you, Sarah. With the degree that you received, what did you end up doing after you graduated? And how did that job lead to where you are today? Tell us some of your story.
Okay, so I graduated in 2007 in my nice 4-year period, and I was super excited. I was just going to temp for the summer, which I did all through college with a couple of great temp agencies. And I had my master's on track. I was going to go to the United Kingdom and get my master's in theater direction at the University of East Anglia.
That's exciting.
It was, and I would have been there at the same time as Matt Smith, who played the Doctor. I would have directed the Doctor before he was the Doctor, and it was going to be great.
Doctor Who fans will understand this reference.
But I hit a paperwork snafu, and the loan company didn't get me the one piece of paper I needed, so it held up my visa, and I deferred for a year and just decided to go full-time at the company I'd been temping at. And then it was December 2007 and the recession hit, and I looked at my deferring plan and thought maybe a master's in theater from an international university isn't actually the most realistic thing right now. And I'm still sad that it never did happen. I still actually don't have a master's degree, much less the one in theater where I would have directed Matt Smith.
Dreams deferred.
But it ended up being okay. So I stayed at the company where I was temping for even longer than I had thought. And it was a manufacturing company in Solon. I was the receptionist. I took on some accounting responsibilities, some customer service added to that. But that wasn't really where I was looking to stay. So I was there for about 1.5 years all total. and then got the dream job, which was using my English degree, which was pretty great because it was still 2008 and still pretty recession-y, which is a technical term.
For those of you that don't know, our economy tanked in 2008, and so a lot of college graduates were really having a hard time trying to get launched into their career.
So it was a great time for an English major. But I did find a job using that English degree, and I took a position as a junior editor at an industry research firm. So it was market research, industry analysis, forecasting, all of that super exciting stuff. But because now I had this background in manufacturing too, I was able to really understand everything I was working with, and I stayed at this company for 6 years. In that time, I became the lead copy editor. I started writing studies of my own. I authored 9 industry forecasting reports. I trained as a senior editor. I managed the flow among the editorial department and did a lot of project management and just picked up responsibilities all over the place.
It sounds like you really took advantage of any kind of roles that you could move up into to try to get your skill set where you needed it to be to move on to the real dream job.
Basically, and I still didn't know what the dream job was, but you never really do. So I kind of tried to find opportunities where they were, accept any mentoring I could take. My boss was great, and she helped lead a program with that. And then also when new employees came, they started a mentorship program. So then I was mentoring 3 newer employees myself, and it was just a really good way to form relationships with everyone.
But mentoring, you guys, good idea. Find yourself a mentor.
And so I was there for 6 years, and during that time I was really thinking about what I wanted to do, and I started applying to different jobs and just kind of thinking what else might present itself. So in the course of that time, I also enrolled in stenography school, and I thought maybe I would work from home, be a closed captioner. There are cool people who have all the subtitles on Netflix. I thought, hey, I could make those more accurate. That'd be a great job.
So you're all over the place at this point. You're just very much dabbling into a lot of different interests that you're finding out about and acquiring a lot of different skills at the same time.
So I was picking things up a lot, and I was working full-time and school part-time. And for personal reasons, the steno program didn't work out, but that was okay too.
That's okay. It happens.
And I learned, some stenography, which is actually a really cool skill set.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Has not come in handy, but I know a lot more legal terms now too, because it was a court reporting program. That's cool. During all that, I also picked up freelance jobs. And so for 5 years now, I've been working in book editing. First with one publishing house, then after they closed, I signed on with another house. So it's really fun to just do some freelance work, evenings, weekends, and I get to freelance novels, which is a lot of fun. And it's a lot of work too, but I really enjoy that. It's a good time.
For somebody who likes to read, that is really a good time.
And so then finally, when I just was really ready for my next opportunity, I was applying pretty much everywhere. I threw out dozens of resumes. Anyone who tells you interviewing is easy is, I don't know why they're lying to you, but finding a job just isn't always easy. Right. Some you fall into, some take some time.
Yeah.
And so ultimately the next job I found was really fortuitous. And this course did take very little time. Between seeing the ad and starting at this new position, maybe 6 days passed.
Oh, good.
So when it happened,
That's
it was
quick.
Actually really quick.
You never know when that's going to happen. Some companies take months and months and months before you ever hear from them, and others want to hire you right away. And it's just based on the company. You never know what you're going to get. And
so this one I saw in actually an email listserv I'd signed up for. Just a friend had been using it, so I signed up, and it was remote editing and writing jobs. And so I happened to see this Craigslist posting from Florida, and I live in Cleveland. So it was unlikely that I would see it, that they would respond, that anything was happening, but this online tech news site was hiring for an editor and writer. I threw them a resume. They got back to me really quickly. We did Skype interviews, we did sample articles, and I put my 2 weeks notice in at the industry research company, but this new site wanted me to start sooner. I worked things out, so I was kind of working both jobs for a little bit, because 2 weeks notice is really good to do, because I wanted to leave on good terms. And
you don't want to burn bridges by just being Peace out.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
I also had a personal interest in that because I did actually meet my husband at that job that I was leaving, and he still works there. So I do still see his current and my previous colleagues.
Yeah, and you want a good reference. You want people to like think highly of you when you leave. You want to give them a good taste in their mouth when you leave. You had mentioned Skype interviews was something that you had to do. Briefly describe how you like get ready for a Skype interview.
Basically the same way that you do for any face-to-face interview. I made sure that I was dressed for it, that I was ready, that I was prepared, that since it was a Skype one, because it was a remote position, that I had a quiet place in my house. And I did have a home office at this point because I'd been freelance editing for a while, so I had my whole setup.
Mm-hmm. Currently, we're in her home office.
And so this was my old one. But I made sure that it was quiet, that my husband knew that I had a meeting at that time, and just that I wouldn't be disturbed, and had everything all set for that. But it's the same as any in-person interview. You just want to be ready, and definitely make sure of what's behind you too. Right now we're behind my Doctor Who wall in my office, which
Doctor Who wall
is fine. When I take Skype meetings now from my desk, I've got some bookshelves behind me, and I'm very aware of what's on them and who I'll be talking to.
Right.
So it's just a lot more personal responsibility for the environmental settings,
right?
Which is fine, but it was a leap, and it was interesting, and things kind of took off from there. Things
took off from your last job. So your last job sort of led you to become a business owner. You're your own LLC now, and you are an entrepreneur as well as a writer, as well as a translator, as well as many things. So can you talk to us about your current field that you're in, your world of expertise? Explain how you ended up in this field and what do you do?
So the two biggest things I always come back to are opportunity and work, because it's a total fluke that I am where I am. And I admit that, because when I took a job as a new editor and writer for a tech news site, I took a leap and said, why not? And the site that hired me was called 3dprint.com. I was their third employee in 2014. And it seemed like a good job. It seemed fun. And I had a little experience with 3D printing. I'd edited an industry report on it. I'd heard some about it, and basically I understood manufacturing and technology.
But it's basically a newer field.
It was a totally new field, but the important thing was I had the opportunity, and then because that was my day in, day out, I was editing articles. At that time we were publishing 15 articles a day, and I edited at least 8 to 12 of them, and then would write as needed. So I was in it all the time and doing something that frequently I added my own research and made sure I really understood what we were covering. So I was given the opportunity, but I really had to run with it to make it make sense to me and make sure I made sense with it. Which was good, because less than a year after I was hired on, the guys who hired me sold the site. And the new owners wanted me to step up to take on the role of editor-in-chief of what was by then a very significant industry resource. And it happened to be right before my 30th birthday, so it was kind of nice to get a terminal title before a landmark birthday.
That's great. And, a lot of people have goals before they're 30, but keep in mind, life still happens after you're 30.
I really hope so. But it does, and frankly, it was luck of timing that they happened to sell the site then, that I was in a good position where I understood what was happening and had a good rapport with the rest of the team. We had 4 full-timers and a stable of freelance writers at that time. So I stepped up and learned on my feet how to be the editor-in-chief of a very busy news site. And that's when I started traveling. My first conference was in California about a month or two after I took over. And so the next about 3 years were a lot of travel, a lot of managing, delegation, working with my full-time and freelance team, figuring out what was happening, what was important, how to assign news, how to curate the news, how to source it, how to make sure everything was attributed, work with all of the guidelines of journalistic integrity, how to publish on the internet, which I'd been doing and, I had some experience in by then. but how to make sure everything was on the level and that we were just being a credible source, also attributing everything appropriately, sourcing all of the images. There's just a lot to everything.
There is. It's very detailed. Right.
So there's a lot to it, and I wanted to see it all. So I started going to conferences, events, site openings, product launches. I went all around the United States, into Europe, into Asia, just getting on the ground and learning as much as I could from as many people as I could. And I met a bunch of incredible people, engineers, physicians working in hospitals with this technology, other journalists who I would see at all these events. And I realized pretty quickly that what started as a job of opportunity was it was a career path for me. And that's not true for everyone. Some of my writers who I worked with for years left the site, and they're in totally different fields now, or they're still writing just about different things.
Did you connect with a lot of those people that you met at the conferences on LinkedIn by any chance?
All of them.
All of them, you guys. Connect with everybody on LinkedIn. This is a great way to market yourself, as well as stay in the loop on what's going on in the industry that you're part of.
I never would have thought, especially in college, that I spend so much more time on LinkedIn than I do on Facebook or anything else. It's sometimes I wonder what's going on with my life when it's like Sunday morning and I'm playing on my phone in bed and I'm like, oh, I have 3 new connection requests on LinkedIn and messages. But it has been a completely valuable tool. I've connected with some great people in the industry. The messaging on it is wonderful. I've received invitations through that. And I can honestly say, like, some of the opportunities that have come up for interviews, for site visits, and just really incredible people to talk to would not have happened without LinkedIn, which the world's weird, you guys.
Yeah.
But LinkedIn is helpful. I've got over 3,200 connections on there.
Wow.
And I still remember, like, my first year at 3D Print, I was at like 498 connections, and I went on my Facebook and I'm like, you guys, you're my personal friends, but I just need like 2 more before I get that like 500 plus connections that LinkedIn makes look so cool.
Yes, LinkedIn has this thing where, like, if you get more than 500 connections, you're sort of like more of an influencer on LinkedIn. But I think with 3,200 connections, you're like a definite top influencer, which means people are seeing you and that your information is in their feeds all the time, and you're putting yourself out there in such a way that professionals in your field are finding you and seeking you out. So, you know, people will reach out to Sarah and say, can I connect with you? Because I've heard about you, or I've read your stories, or you were at the company that I work at the other day, or you gave a speech that I really connected with. Because you give lectures now. Like, she's a keynote speaker now, you know, so people want to connect with Sarah. And this is a good way of doing that.
And LinkedIn helped a lot because, as Michelle has alluded to, this past summer in June and July, I decided to try a totally different thing. And I left 3D Print and the safety of a job and company owned by someone else. And I struck out on my own. There were things I wanted to do that I needed to do on my own. So I formed a sole proprietorship LLC, which I learned a lot about. It is surprisingly easy in the state of Ohio. And my banker was a great help. I got recommendations for accountants. Forming relationships is so, so important. I know some other small business owners, and I was able to get a lot of really great advice from them.
Right. Networking with other people that are trying to do what you're doing because they've crossed that bridge before you. So they often have a lot of advice. And if Sarah is a writer, she's not so much an accountant. Making relationships happen with people that know how to do the things that you don't know how to do is very important.
I couldn't be where I am without the people that I've surrounded myself with. It's been super important. And so when I formed my own company over the summer, I launched a few weeks after I left 3D Print and had put all the behind-the-scenes legwork in to make sure everything was ready to launch. And Additive Integrity LLC was officially formed in July 2018. So it's been about 6 months now. Through them, I work with one primary client, which is another industry publication called Fabaloo. And with them, I'm the managing editor. So I do day-to-day content operations for their site, sourcing, editing, publishing, writing, and working with the team there and traveling on their behalf to most events now.
Nice.
And I also work with some other publications, a couple of industry-specific ones called All 3DP and 3D Printing Business Media Network, but also with larger publications. For the last couple of months, I've been working with Forbes. Which is pretty cool.
That is pretty amazing. Forbes is like a standard bearer of business news. So it's a big deal to be writing and contributing. To be a contributor to Forbes is a big deal in a writing career.
Forbes.com is really great because they've opened up 2 industry contributors. So I'm in their industry section under manufacturing. So that's kind of my area of expertise. So I focus on that, and their contributor program is really wonderful, and they get people who really know what they're talking about, and they're able to take that to larger audiences.
And they're not going to hire any dummy at Forbes. They're going to hire somebody that's really like involved in the industry, whatever industry they're covering. So it's interesting to me that you're not an engineer, yet you're a big player in manufacturing, which when we think of manufacturing, we think of engineers and people that are great at math. But as Sarah has said, she's not an accountant. She's not great at math.
I'm not.
I'm not great at math either. But like, she has an English and theater degree, and she's a major player in the manufacturing industry. So this is what I mean by when I say a non-linear career path, going in a direction that doesn't necessarily sound obvious. Like, I'm going to major in biology and then become a doctor. Some people major in biology and become other things, and they do other things with that degree or with other skills that they have or other passions that they have. So think of that, keep that in mind, moving right along.
And a huge part of that is finding the things you're passionate about. And so one of my major things that it's so important for me to get word about is the diversity of my industry. And that was one of the major reasons I needed to strike out on my own. I'm working really closely with an industry advocacy group called Women in 3D Printing.
Women in 3D Printing. Keep that in mind.
And so I joined the board of directors there when that organization officially became a nonprofit a little bit earlier last year, because it's 2019 now. So we were officially a nonprofit at the end of the summer, and we announced the board of directors. So there are 3 of us on that, and it's such an incredible experience to be shaping the future of this organization. And Women in 3D Printing is 4 years old, and the founder, Nora, is just incredible. But it's this huge network of women and men in the industry who are working to make sure that the face of manufacturing doesn't look like what you think it might, and that the face is in all of those executive boardrooms don't look like you might be used to seeing. And there's so many people, so many women, so many young people, and just so many people from different backgrounds, ethnicities, cultures, educational backgrounds, degree programs, and we all make up this industry. And there have been studies that prove that, you know, people who think differently get more done.
Right. Diversity is definitely a benefit to any business or industry that you're in. And there's studies that prove that having more voices at the table, people can solve problems and come up with really creative ways of solving issues. So that's really amazing that you're on this board. That is really cool. What is some of the most crucial skills? What are some of the more crucial skills that you must have in order to be great at your job?
In my specific part of my field, the 2 biggest things that I really focus on are communication and integrity. And integrity is so important to me, I put it as my business name.
Yes.
And I just really think that journalists get a bad rap sometimes. People might not trust reporters, but you really need to have trusted sources. And so it's taken me, you know, the better part of 5 years now to just really build up that level of trust, personally, professionally, with people within the industry, so they share things with me, with my readers, so that they want to read and they trust what I'm saying and what the people I'm working with are saying. And it's just one of those things where I always tell someone, you know, if you only read what I'm writing, you're wrong. If you only read what the other guy's writing, you're wrong. And so you just really need a lot of tools in the toolbox and a lot of people you can trust, but clarity and honesty are huge. And especially with 3D printing, since it's such a young industry, it only started back in the 80s, really. And if you've heard of it, a few years ago, it was really hyped up, and, you know, a 3D printer in every house, it'll be as common as a microwave, and just those things aren't true. And they're not going to be true. You might not own a 3D printer, and you might not ever, and that's probably good. Like, there are a lot of pieces of machinery I don't own, and I never will own.
Right.
But just understanding what is realistic and what you do need things for is super important. And especially in the industry I work in, it's really small. You can't say everyone knows everyone, but
almost.
Yeah. And word travels really quickly.
So keeping your reputation at the forefront is really important in order for people to take you seriously and trust you with your writing about the industry.
And that's why I love what I do specifically, because now I choose all of my clients. If I don't want to work with somebody, I don't have to.
That's nice.
And there are people I won't work with. And there are people I will jump at the chance to work with, because more than anything, this has made me more optimistic, which is not my natural, but I'm trying. But there are so many incredible things legitimately being done with this technology that I don't have time for people who are making stuff up. Like, there's enough genuine cool stuff happening. But skills-wise, those things are really important. All of the obvious things, too. I'm a writer. I need to be able to write. I need to be able to write coherently and clearly. I need to be able to edit well. And I usually position myself kind of more as a translator. I'm not an engineer, but a speak engineer. And I can translate that for audiences.
And this is true. When I've read Sarah's writing about 3D printing, which is an industry I don't understand, her writing comes across as extremely clear. You suddenly understand what the trends are in the companies and, you know, what the new things are that are going on when you read whatever she's writing. So being a translator, that's a really great skill that she can talk about. Go for it.
It didn't come naturally to me, I'll say that, but over the years I've definitely learned what all of these things mean, and I've learned more about metallurgy than I ever thought I would need to know. And sometimes it's really taking advantage of those opportunities, because I was leaving IMTS a couple of months back, which is the biggest manufacturing trade show in the United States, and it's held every other year. And when it does happen, it's this huge deal. It takes over most of Chicago and this huge hall there, and it's just massive. And metal 3D printing was the big trend on the additive manufacturing side of the show this year. And I was boarding my plane and I was like, oh gosh, I should take a metallurgy class. Like, I don't know enough about this area. And as weird fate had it, I sat next to a metallurgist on the flight home. And the flight from Chicago to Cleveland's very short, but we spent the whole hour talking about metal powder and the dynamics of it and the properties and how it interacts in different and it was just this really handy thing. And I'm no longer signing up for Metallurgy 101 because I got it on the plane. It was great.
Well, and this is great too. Like, it's not like you went to college and studied metallurgy. You went to college and studied English and theater, and yet you've got this whole like language of an industry that's totally different from what you would expect. When, you know, freshman college you was at Muskingum, you weren't thinking that this is what you would be needing to know about.
Really not. I never thought that phrases like low aspect ratio would be important to my life, or to be anything than, you know, other than 3 words that were just kind of together for no real reason. But now I actually know what those are and can tell other people what they are and why they're important. And so that kind of accessibility in communication skills and in writing is really especially huge for me.
So, what are some of the specific soft skills that you have that you've become an expert at? Things that people probably can't teach you, but you've become successful with and you use every day with your job.
I always like to joke to people, especially anyone a little bit younger, that if you really like 1,000 deadlines for papers, you should definitely become a writer. It's all deadlines. My life is all deadlines. So time management is a very real thing, and going along with that is prioritizing, especially now that I own my own company and I work with several clients. If I don't manage my time, no one else is going to do it for me, and if things don't get done, it's not just bad for me, it's bad for my clients who are counting on the work that I'm providing them. And I do have a primary client, so I know going in that they're my primary focus, and the bulk of each day is spent doing work for Fabaloo. But because I do have other clients, I need to be able to balance that and really figure that out and figure out what I can and can't do. I've had to turn clients away because my workload is too heavy, or say, November's too busy because there's a major conference in Germany, I won't be able to turn this around by a deadline that you want. So we need to either move that deadline back, or you need to hire somebody else to do that and take that work elsewhere. I hate losing out on work, but life is what it is, and it's all about being realistic and teaching myself to trust other people has been a big one for me as well. Because again, not an accountant, and I needed one. So I needed to learn who I could trust and who I could work with when I was setting up my business. And
that's a big deal. Yeah.
It's huge, and there's so many aspects to this business and to all of it. And all of my clients and partners are people I trust completely. The team at Fabaloo were people I was so excited to work with because they're just genuinely good people who know what they're doing and they have fun doing it. And we have meetings once a week, and I didn't really know that weekly meetings could be a lot of fun, but we have a good time. And it's just a Skype meeting every week to catch up on how everything's going and talk about plans. But
so even though you work for yourself, you still have coworkers.
Basically, yeah.
Yes.
Which is nice. It's a little bit less lonely.
Yeah.
But also because there's so much travel in my industry and in what I do, there's so many shows and international events.
Yeah, Sarah's constantly on a plane. Like, she's got to manage her time to be able to manage all of the plane trips that she takes to Europe, to Asia, all around the United States. She is somewhere like every other week. And we're catching her for this interview at a time where she's actually in the United States, which is amazing.
I was actually supposed to be in Minnesota this week, but...
Good thing she's not.
That trip got moved back because you also have to be flexible.
Right.
But with travel, it's a lot of work-life balance as well. I do have a family at home, and I need to prioritize that. And with all of the travel, if a flight gets delayed or canceled, that impacts my personal life as well. And, that's tricky. And my two best friends got married within 2 weeks of each other this past fall, which was great but exhausting because I was my girlfriend's matron of honor and my guy friend's best man.
Oh, yeah.
2
Greg.
weeks apart, yeah. And so right after Greg's wedding, I had an event in Israel, which was my very first time being invited to Israel, and I really wanted to go to see this new center. But I couldn't fly out on Saturday because my best friend was getting married. So I flew out on Sunday instead, which meant with the time difference, I landed first thing Monday morning. So they picked me up at the airport and we went straight to the site opening event.
Right off the plane.
Right off the plane. For international trips, usually there's a 1-day buffer to get used to the time difference and to do nice things like not
wash
smell
your hair.
like an airplane.
Right.
So my other soft skills include getting tidied up in airport bathrooms.
Oh, wow.
Which thankfully are often roomier than you would think. And sleeping on airplanes, which is a definite skill.
No kidding.
These are, again, very specific to what I'm doing. But travel does come up for a lot of positions. So being able to handle that and understand the mechanics of it, having the confidence to travel alone.
Especially long flights alone.
Especially long flights into new places, and especially, honestly, as a woman, like, there are things that I take into consideration that my male colleagues don't. And some have expressed genuine surprise when I've said there are places I wouldn't feel comfortable traveling by myself, and they said, why? And I was like, have you read the news? I am actually a woman traveling by myself, and
people get kidnapped.
Things happen.
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate, and I like to think a good traveler. So everything's been fine. You just need to obviously also use your soft skills to stay aware of yourself and your belongings and just personal responsibility and spatial awareness.
You also have to have a good cross-cultural competency of being able to talk to people and relate to people from different cultures all over the world whenever you greet them and meet them.
Absolutely. Not just in 3D printing. In almost any industry these days, there's such a big international component because the world's very global, and with all this great technology, we're all more connected than ever before. And so when I meet new people at conferences, being able to understand how to appropriately greet them and work with them, how to shake hands. For Europeans, how many times do you kiss each cheek? The one that throws me is 3. Some people do 3 kisses. 1 I get, mostly the British. 2's fine, the French. But 3, the Italians, I don't understand what's happening. 4 is fine because it's another even, but the 3 really just gets me. I just kind of keep going. But you need to be aware of that.
A lot of love. Yeah,
so
you
learning
have to
follow social cues and just see what's acceptable. There's also, the way that even how you exchange business cards when you're talking to people from many Asian countries, you'll give and exchange your business card with 2 hands. It's a sign of respect, and you always want to be respectful in your business dealings. Americans are often very casual, but a lot of other places, not so much. I've done business in Germany, and it's just a much more professional environment that you need to be aware of, and where the lines do and do not blur for conversations. Some people, it's okay to ask about their families. Other people, that's crossing a line, and you need to only talk about business. But a lot of it is learning as you go, because obviously, especially if you're going to a lot of places,
it changes from culture to culture.
And it becomes very difficult to keep up with all of those, to do the research ahead of time. I always try to, but following cues is a very important thing, just in life and business.
What is like one major way that your education or professional experience has prepared you to do this kind of work? To quickly wrap it up, to start to wrap it up.
It's been kind of cool because I do come from a liberal arts background where it's not just a main focus on one skill, but on many skills, and transferable skills is the biggest thing I had. Because I am fortunate to use both my English and theater degrees, English through writing, theater, because I do, as Michelle noted, I do speaking engagements, I've keynoted, I've done presentations and webinars, and I'm picking up on all of those. And with the background in theater, I'm much more comfortable doing that. I've got a background in improv, so I feel a little bit more geared to react to people and just stay in moments.
That's cool.
And also, just with all of the cross-disciplinary focuses have been really helpful professionally as well, because learning to take critiques from a variety of people really built all of my skills up a lot stronger and helped me to put them together into something completely new and hopefully applicable to more than one thing. And just finding what you're good at and learning how to apply it to useful things has been really critical.
What is like one solid piece of advice you'd give to a college student that's trying to find their way?
I would say just find the right balance between confidence and humility, because being confident in your strengths, learning what they are and really leaning into those and digging in, build up what you're good at and know that you're good at it and have the confidence to put yourself out there. But also accept that you're going to fail and do that confidently, because it's a learning opportunity better than anything you'll get in a classroom. And be humble, accept those learning moments, and that you don't know everything, and you're not going to, and you just never will. And taking it with humility and working with others and relying on your networks and having the humor to get along with it and the grace to do so well is just so important.
Is there anything else you would like to add, or have we covered most of it?
I feel like we've covered pretty much everything, I would say. Just take advantage of opportunities. Don't be afraid. I never thought I would be in 3D printing, but
you're glad you are now.
I really am glad I am, and this is what I do now, and I love it, and I wouldn't change it.
Right. So, and you as a freshman would have never have guessed as a freshman in college.
And my job track did not exist when I was a freshman.
Right.
In 2003, the sites I've worked for didn't exist. A lot of the companies I work with now and write about, they did exist. But the specific things I do, they weren't out there. When I came out of high school, when I went into college, when I went through, the world's changing really quickly, and opportunities.
Being agile.
Surprises. Yeah, agility is huge in all of this, and just agility and opportunity and leaning into that.
So thank you so much, Sarah, for talking with our class today. I hope you all appreciate the wisdom, and it sparks some thinking, and we're going to talk about that. Thank you so much for listening.